welcome to Maryland Leads Pavilion, and I want to give a thanks and a shout out to all of our exhibitors here. We really appreciate it. I'm really happy to introduce our panel, our 3 o'clock panel, What It Takes to Move Innovation Forward, with two very, very important members of ours, Fisher Scientific. They're a huge partner of ours. We appreciate them, and they're great for the community, and also Trillium. They're fantastic partners for BioHub Maryland as well, so we appreciate everything that everybody does for us. They're going to introduce themselves. I'm going to hand it off to the moderator and then go from there.
Thanks, Michelle, for that really kind introduction, and thanks to Maryland Tech Council for having us here at the booth and for giving us a chance to be part of this fireside chat. Just to get started, I'm going to ask both of our panelists to quickly introduce themselves and what the wonderful work that their companies do. So on the panel today, we'll have Daniela Cramp, who is the Senior Vice President and President of Bioproduction and Customer Excellence at Fisher Scientific, and my colleague Helen Voss, who is the VP of Product at TrilliumBiO. So Daniela, do you want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, give us kind of a little highlight of where you've been in your career, your kind of career journey, and tell us about some of the work that Fisher Scientific is doing.
I'd be delighted. Can you hear me okay? Is this okay? Okay. Hi, my name is Daniela Cramp, and I'm delighted to be here and honored to be here on behalf of Fisher Scientific. Really exciting opportunity for us. So I have been in the life sciences and medical diagnostics industry for about 30 years, and before joining Thermo Fisher was in the medical device space with Johnson & Johnson. Thermo Fisher is a leader in life sciences, and our mission is to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. And we are very excited to be here at BIO because a lot of the work that we're doing with our customers here are all about enabling all of you to do just that. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniela. And Helen, you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background and what we do at TrilliumBiO?
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Hopefully? No? A little closer? Oh, that close. Yeah. Hi. Thanks to the Maryland Tech Council for putting this on. Maryland BioHub. We actually share a lab space, or we're in the same building in Rockville, Maryland. So my name is Helen Voss. I have been in the industry a little over 13-ish years. I have my PhD. Actually worked at Thermo Fisher, my first job in the industry, doing next-gen sequencing and CLIA lab optimization of some of the ion torrent things when it was first there. But then I went into pharma and worked a lot in clinical development, in medical affairs, really along the value chain of how we can develop products, how we can launch those products and grow. And then I came around to TrilliumBiO in just a happenstance way, and now I get to be on the other side, which is actually helping patients get diagnosed. And so at TrilliumBiO, we are a biomarker discovery and product commercialization for diagnostics laboratory. So we have a CLIA CAP ISO certified laboratory where we work with a wide variety of stakeholders and partners, but most importantly, a lot of pharma companies and sponsors to help them with their clinical trials, identifying patients, identifying which patients need to be in the trials, but also on the therapies, and then work afterwards to do even disease monitoring, routine lab testing. So that's where we're at. Yeah, a little bit different from you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin. So just to get right into it, we're here to talk about innovation and what it takes to advance innovation, really get it to patients. And so maybe just to lead the whole thing off, as diagnostics, manufacturing, therapeutics, all these things become increasingly interconnected. What changes have happened in the industry since in the past year? So I know that last year at this same conference, our two companies did this a fireside chat as well, and I'm sure we talked about a lot of interesting things. And curious to hear from both of you, what do you think has changed in the year that has passed? Danielle, you want to lead us off?
Sure. Well, I'd say a couple of things. First of all, I think that life science innovation across the globe has just expanded and exploded. We're seeing a lot of molecule development in parts of the globe that we've never seen it in before, and I think that represents a lot of new opportunity and new work for all of us, right, as we see more biotech expansion and novelty in development in all parts of the world. So that's one change I think that's very clear. And then as I think about genomics and proteomics and the advent of a lot of artificial intelligence tools in the last year, oh my goodness, it's really unlocking a lot more power and a lot more value in capabilities in the industry that we didn't really talk about too much a year ago. I mean, these things were just coming to the fold. So I think that's been a real change. And then another that I think is a pretty interesting trend, and actually today speaking with some partners of ours was a topic of a lot of discussion. A lot of work on manufacturing, reshoring, and expanding manufacturing capacity, particularly here in the United States. It's been a very, very big opportunity and a big need that many are seeing right now. So I think these are all topics that are really hot and important right now for people in life sciences.
Awesome, thanks Daniela. And Ellen, what about from a more diagnostic perspective?
Yeah, so I wasn't here last year.
Neither was I. So.
Yeah, for anyone that was here, it was Joanna, so I look nothing like her. But hopefully we get to do this next year and just keep this going. So one of the things coming into the diagnostic field that I have found really compelling was that back in 2024, the FDA actually was putting in some regulatory rules that would have basically turned our laboratory developed testing, which is our bread and butter, into a medical device. And so there's a lot of reasons that's not a great thing for us, but the courts ended up finding that that wasn't useful and went about saying, no, you can't do this, CLIA already does that. So that happened last year, and then the FDA finally said, okay, fine, we don't want to do that at the end of last year. So that was great for us, but also great for the patients, because as we're developing LDTs, if we had to go through the whole medical device approval process, that would take years before we could actually have that LDT useful for the clinical trial that the patient's in. What, I guess, just reverting to a couple of years ago, it allows us to continue to develop those tests in parallel with the therapeutic industry, and that allows us to actually be more effective and get things to patients much faster. So it was a positive win for us. Basically we didn't really win. Nobody lost. That's how it ended up. Yeah.
Great. Thanks to both of you for those really thorough answers, and I think we have a lot of things that have happened and really impacted the way we address innovation. I think one thing that also comes to mind as we discuss innovation is how do we define it, right? What really constitutes a truly successful innovation from both a scientific perspective, from a patient perspective? Helen, if you want to lead us off, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So for us, I think the two tracks really have to converge at some point. And so that scientific rigor for us is like a non-negotiable, right? So in our validation, we have to have a really high sensitivity and specificity. It's got to be rigorously validated, and then it's got to be ready for regulatory approval as it moves forward. But the patient track is really the cool part, and we work a lot at TrilliumBiO on rare diseases, and so we're really focused on getting those precious patient samples into the lab. So we really think that every single patient in the rare disease community matters. And so our diagnostics have to reflect, right? We can't just have something that is just okay, right? And we can't put something out there that the patients don't understand or the physicians can't interpret. So there's more to it than just the actual science behind it, and that's where, for us, success actually is where the test is accessible. It's not just that there is a test, right?
Yeah, that sounds great. How about you, Daniela?
So I think a couple of things. First of all, with the advent of precision medicine, it's a super exciting time for us. And it starts with first understanding the biology of the disease, right? You've got to understand the biology of that, and many of the tools that we make at Thermo Fisher Scientific really help you do that. And we have a whole suite of analytical testing equipment that can help understand and characterize the biology of the disease. But then after you do that, you've got to understand the patient, and you've got to identify the patient, be able to identify the patient for treatment. And that can happen in a number of ways, and we'll talk later about some tools that we have available for that. But you've got to be able to identify those patients. And then the third, and probably most important thing, is creating access for patients. You know, I think about the oncology patient today and the journey for people with cancer. And today, academic centers are the center point where most, frankly, tools are available. But the truth is, 85% of cancer patients are actually treated in the community. And so creating accessibility to tools that are available for all physicians in community settings is what's really critical and important. And that's where tools like, for example, our OncoMind diagnostics test, this is the first FDA-approved test for non-small lung cancer, come into play. This is a next-generation sequencing system that allows for rapid detection and support in the community setting and not in an academic setting alone. So it's creating, I think, first of all, understanding of the disease. Second, being able to find and identify the right patients through the right clinical lens, and then creating access.
That's agreed on all counts with everything you just said. So with that in mind, I mean, I think obviously like everything we're saying about access and diagnostics is all very important. I think it's also, you know, ultimately the goal is to find therapies, right? Therapeutics for these different diseases. And so, you know, as diagnostics and therapeutics become increasingly kind of interconnected, I'm curious to hear kind of your perspectives on how like integrated partnerships and integrated services can really help to accelerate drug development from, you know, kind of discovery phase all the way through commercialization, and we're talking patient access as well. And specifically, you know, how are both of your companies kind of addressing or reducing you know, bottlenecks in the traditional process? And, you know, Danielle, do you want to kind of offer some thoughts on that to get us started?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that becomes really important for providers is making capabilities to support patients through a clinical journey very, very simplistic and easy to handle. And so I'll say one of the things that we've thought about as we think about integrated capabilities and services for people really relate to the drug development journey, starting at the very early stage when you're in research, identifying patients who are appropriate for therapies and for clinical trials and for that journey, and then building all the way through to manufacturing the therapies, building the raw material capabilities to support our manufacturers as they develop these drugs and as they bring them to market. And then we also integrate CDMO services that help support the actual manufacturing process end to end. And we can support the regulatory process as well for our customers. So really from the start of the journey, very early on in the discovery process, all the way through to the end of the journey where a product effectively hits a patient, we've got the ability to support the pathway. And so when I think about these integrated capabilities, I think about our accelerator drug development capability, which really integrates fully our capabilities for CDMO services along with the clinical services and clinical trial support that help bring a product to market. In addition, we just recently launched a bioprocessing design center here in the United States that actually will help support characterizing, frankly, the raw materials and the whole process a customer uses as they begin to build and develop their manufacturing process. So that's how we think about some of these integrated solutions.
That's great. Yeah, so for us, one of the core bottlenecks that we're always trying to solve for is shortening that gap between the biomarker hypothesis that comes up and then the actual test that's made, right? So one of the things that we really focus on at Trillium is trying to do that within a 3 to 6 month period, which is ambitious at times, but it's something that we really believe in as a core cultural value for what we're doing. So the solution for how we can kind of address those bottlenecks is to get in early with the sponsors, right? So a lot of times, if you wait until the phase 2 stage to try and develop a biomarker for your phase 3, you're playing catch up, and it becomes a lot more challenging and more expensive and timely. If you partner with us early on in like the translational research phase, that preclinical stage before you're going first in human, we can then talk about how we can integrate into your entire clinical program. But then sometimes, the bottlenecks aren't always just scientific; they're logistic, right? And so we offer a lot of different capabilities and solutions with global logistics, being able to handle samples from all over the world, being able to do physician and patient outreach and education. So there's a lot of other things that we can do to alleviate some of these bottlenecks that are traditionally around diagnostic and information. So, yep.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it's really great to hear about how both these companies can work in different ways to resolve some of these bottlenecks in drug development and tie it all together. But I'm also kind of curious. That raises the question for me of like, how can the traditional kind of drug development process, improve and adapt, and in this more personalized, data-driven, interconnected, like healthcare ecosystem that we're moving into every single day. How can the traditional development process kind of evolve to better support this infrastructure that we're building? I don't know, Kellen, any thoughts to start off?
Yeah, because we actually have people here, I want to ask people, has anyone here actually worked on a program where the diagnostic and the therapeutic were developed at the same time? Oh, one. Okay. Do you want to... Oh, Keytruda. There you go. That's not a very popular drug at all, right? So, yeah, we definitely shouldn't follow that example. Anyone ever work on a program where there was no diagnostic at all, or it was really late and didn't really impact anything? I'm assuming there are people, but everyone's too shy. So anyway, yeah. So I think there's, at risk of repeating myself from the last answers, I think there's a lot of opportunity early on, right? And when you have those regulatory ideas and strategy coming early in the development cycle, thinking about, can these diagnostics eventually become companion diagnostics and FDA approved, and really help to stratify your patients, to accelerate your clinical trial work, to potentially reduce costs and unnecessary treatments, as we see a lot in the pharmaceutical realm, where there's a lot of drugs that don't work for specific people, and if you have the appropriate biomarkers, you could basically not put them on those drugs. And so if you do, the earlier you do that, the cheaper that conversation is, the cheaper the work is, and the faster you accelerate. And so if we think about actually treating the diagnostic as a core program asset, and rather than a late stage vendor call, which TrilliumBiO is not a vendor, we are definitely a partner in this. It really just sets you up for success as a company, especially if you're competing with somebody to get to market. If you can pull the patients that you actually need and get to market faster, that's the key.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that that's a great call to action for anyone listening and in that space to really think about these things. Danielle, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on something you said earlier. You talked about companion diagnostics and the importance of actually integrating those two things, and both diagnostics and the therapy that goes with it. And I think, traditionally it was always, let's create a diagnostic test and then a therapy that will treat it. And the world has changed. Being able to do those things together, being able to monitor and track and support the patient becomes so important, especially with cost pressures as they are in our healthcare system. And so I think a little bit about that when I think about the advent of, frankly, artificial intelligence and proteomics, and the ability now to develop companion diagnostics in a very different way. And we actually, a couple of years ago at Thermo Fisher Scientific, acquired a capability called Olink. It's a biomarker discovery capability that we have that can be leveraged both in early stage discovery to identify biomarkers for therapeutic targets or for companion diagnostic targets. And then frankly, later on in the process, as someone is treated or as we look for patients to identify for clinical trials, the panel and the platform can be leveraged actually to identify the right populations for clinical trial selection. So I think about some of these things, and I think about being able to do this in an era where we wouldn't have been able to do this 10 years ago because we've got the ability to process so much more data and measure so many more things. So I'm really excited to think about, the advent of companion diagnostics and therapeutics and working together.
Yeah, these are all great thoughts in terms of how the process can really improve and can get better. I think one natural question that brings up is, as we're talking about innovation and bringing innovation to patients, what are some of the challenges that biopharma companies kind of face as they're doing so? What major challenges do we see kind of people overcoming to bring innovation to patients? And Danielle, I'd love to hear any thoughts you have. I know that you guys work a lot with companies in that space, and I'd love to hear what you see as the major challenges we're trying to overcome.
Well, I think bringing molecules to medicine cost effectively is absolutely a big topic. And it's become increasingly more a topic because of the cost pressures in the healthcare systems everywhere. And creating more accessibility for people to get these new therapeutics is really important as well. And so this is where I think companies like ours can play a big role in that we can actually help our customers characterize and build a whole new process for manufacturing their therapies at a much more cost-effective rate than they may have before, simply by modifying the way that the raw materials are leveraged in a bioprocessing ecosystem. So I think that's a really key capability, and leveraging these bioprocessing design centers that we have around the globe, both in Asia as well as here in the US, is a great way for us to partner to actually help our customers select the right way to manufacture products more cost effectively, because it's only going to become more a pressure point over time.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I think, as in terms of challenges, like that's definitely the kind of thing that, again, you want to think about earlier in the process. I think it's a theme that we're focusing on here is, if you're going to bring discovery and turn it into actual impact on patients, you want to start thinking about all of the other things that need to happen along the way as early in the process as you possibly can. So I think that's a really, really good take-home message if people are only going to listen to one thing that we talk about this whole time. Helen, I have other questions maybe a bit more geared towards you as well. In terms of, our company, TrilliumBiO, like what we do in the testing space, how do we kind of differentiate ourselves beyond just testing? I know you kind of mentioned a little earlier, like we're not a vendor, we're a partner, and I'd love to kind of see like, what does that mean? What are we doing to kind of ensure better patient outcomes throughout the journey?
Yeah. So I think our biggest differentiator is that we're not just one thing. So to each individual partner, we are something different. We look at our total package of capabilities and our testing capabilities, but also our education and support capabilities, our our logistics capabilities. All of those things add up to differentiation from other labs. And I think a really great example of this is our partnership with Grifols on their alpha ID test, which is for alpha-1 antitrypsin disease, deficiency disease, and where we are the testing partner for their sponsored testing program. And it's great. We get to basically, so for anyone that doesn't know, alpha-1 antitrypsin is a really rare pulmonology disorder that's frequently misdiagnosed. And so Grifols sponsors the testing so that the patients can see, oh, do I have this or not? And then we do all the testing for that. But on top of that, we're also educating the physicians, we're educating the patients, we're working with the advocacy groups. We handle all of those samples and logistics. Grifols doesn't see any of that. They're just over here on the side doing their therapeutics part. But for us, that partnership, which is very different from some of our other partnerships, is really key to show our kind of pan capabilities across the entire development chain.
Yeah, I think that one thing that also kind of brings to mind is, oftentimes, like we work a lot in rare disease, and often, like Alpha 1 is a great example. Like it is a rare disease, but it may also be an underdiagnosed disease, and that's one of those ways in which diagnostics and therapeutic development can go hand in hand. Because once you have a diagnostic, you may find that a rare disease is not actually that rare, and then if you're developing a therapeutic for it, you might find that the market that you're looking at is actually substantially larger than you may have thought, and that's I think the Alpha 1 program, I'm really glad Colin brought it up, is a great example of how diagnostics and therapeutic development are not necessarily two orthogonal aspects of work in this industry. They're really tied together, and they can really inform and empower one another. And I think like that whole program is a really good example of that. So I know that we've talked, we've covered problems, bottlenecks, challenges. I think we do want to at some point focus on something a bit more positive. So maybe knowing that all this stuff is out there, biologics, precision medicine, all these things that are really pushing forward these days, and they're reshaping our industry, right? So I think one thing that would be good to also cover is where are the opportunities that you guys see in the next year, right, in the year ahead? If we do this again next year, like what opportunities do you think there are for improvements, for real change? What unmet needs are there along the pathway from discovery to commercialization? Daniela, I'd love to start with you and hear what thoughts you have.
Sure. Well, I think predictability is really of high value. It's expensive to develop new therapies. It's high risk, and there's a lot of reward if you have predictability. And so I think the more that our industry has predictability around and some assurance around the process, the drug development process, whether it's in the discovery phase or all the way through to the manufacture of a batch of product, I think predictability becomes really of high value and importance. And so to me, I think that's something, especially with more capable tools than ever before and more artificial intelligence to help drive predictability, we should be able to see more and more improvement in that theme over time. That would be something I think we're going to see.
Yeah. So for us, TrilliumBiO is about 4 years old. Both Gustav and I and some other members here haven't been there nearly that long. And so TrilliumBiO has been slowly, steadily growing. And I think for us, our opportunities are really around closing that gap faster. As we expand, we'll be able to really bring in more hands and be able to work on more diverse ideas across all of our capabilities. But not only from the testing perspective, but also from some of the gaps in care perspective. And well, I can't really say what it is. In a few weeks, you'll see an announcement that there is something that we've been working on for addressing some gaps in care in the neuroscience space that really kind of pull together all of the kind of disparate ideas that exist into one central platform. And so those types of opportunities to kind of take little pieces here and there that exist but aren't connected and really connect all of those so that the path from A to Z becomes much shorter. That's really where TrilliumBiO, I think, is going to have a lot of opportunity to excel for the next few years.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing all that stuff come to fruition as well. And I think we're here at Bio. We're in and around all of these amazing people doing all this amazing work. I think one thing that I really want to highlight and give you both this kind of space to highlight is what reasons do you have, what reasons can you give everyone that's listening to be optimistic that we all of us who are here listening, everyone who's here at Bio, why should we be optimistic that all of us together can really make meaningful impacts to patient care? And we're talking here about discovery and turning discovery into something that's really impactful. Why should we be optimistic that we can all achieve that together? And Daniela, if you want to lead us off.
Absolutely. I love that question because 10 years ago, when I think about where we were in healthcare and in this area, we really didn't have a whole lot of capability in the area of proteomics. And you fast forward 10 years to where we are today, and amazing capability. And I can only imagine what 10 years from now will look like for us. It's only going to get better and better as technology gets better and more advanced. So I'm incredibly optimistic for the future and for patients all over the world and frankly for humanity, because we're going to continue to find new ways to innovate and identify and uncover disease and improve health. And that's what it's really all about at the end of the day is that, right? That's why we're all here at this kind of a conference is to talk about that, health and improving quality of life. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, so for me, I want to give kind of a concrete example of optimism because I think it's always useful to have something to kind of attach to. So on Monday, this is not the thing I just talked about, but different thing. So on Monday we are launching Lamb Air, which is our test for lamb patients. So if anyone wants to take a stab at saying it out loud, it's lymphangioliomyomatosis. So it's a rare pulmonology disorder that primarily affects women and has a huge delay in diagnosis and is often confused with other things as well. But we kind of asked the question, what if the patients didn't have to really navigate these complex referral networks just to get an answer on what they got, right? And so we partnered with the Lamb Foundation, which is the advocacy group, to develop this test for them. And it takes very little turnaround time and gets them the answers they need quickly. And then provides the doctors and the patients with the resources that they need in order to understand their diagnosis. And so that's one of the kind of optimistic things that as we partner with both our physicians and our drug development, but also the patient advocacy groups who are often looking for answers. Being able to provide those types of answers to them is something that excites me a lot, and we look forward if there's any advocacy groups in the audience. If anyone needs help finding biomarker development, we are here. That's something that we're very proud of launching here in the next couple of years.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think what I heard both of you say is that it's really ultimately all about patients, right? Like that's the reason that we are all here, and some of us, maybe on the discovery side, the commercialization side, the biomarker side, the manufacturing side. We're all in all these different parts of it, but ultimately we're all on the patient side, right? And that's why we're all here. That's why we're all doing this. And so I think it's wonderful that both of the sponsors really touched on that. So I think that that's really what brings everyone here, and that's why we're all doing what we do. And I think if we keep focused on that over the next year, we'll have a lot of really cool stuff to talk about at Bio next year. So yeah, really excited. Thank you both so much for sharing all these wonderful insights. I think that there's a lot that we've discussed. Hopefully, a lot of food for thought for those in the audience. And yeah, really grateful to you both for your time. And I'd like to open it up to the audience now for Q&A. If anyone has any questions for either of our panelists, you can direct it at them or kind of throw it out and see who wants to answer it. So if anyone has any questions out there, we'd love to hear them. Yeah, let's have a round of applause for our panelists. Come on. Thank you both.